We're live. Hey, you guys. It is Lisa Alexander, founder and executive director of Stand Up Survivor. Super excited to have you guys join us tonight. So come on in. We are talking about a very important topic tonight. So come on in here, y'all. Come on in. I'm going to give you a few minutes before I introduce our beautiful guest. Hey, when you pop in, say where you're coming in from so we know who you are, so we can say, hey. Amira, do you know? Hey, Amira. All right, so give me like 30 more seconds and we're going to get started.
Was that my Amira?
I think it is. She said she's so proud of you.
Oh, hey, Amira.
Hey, North Carolina. Hey, Dawn. All right. So you guys, I'm super excited to have our guest tonight, Miss Loriana Newman. Hey, Loriana.
Hey. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. Loriana, you guys, is a certified holistic life and wellness coach. She is also a certified health and education specialist, and she is gracing us today with her presence. She is also a survivor, and she has a story to share with you guys. And so if you know anyone who is a survivor of domestic violence, a survivor of sexual assault, or both together, you definitely want to make sure that they tune in and that you share this video with them. So, hey, Loriana, I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Lincoln. Hey, Kelly. Hey, you guys, come on in here. Hey, Carlene. Hey. So tonight we're talking about a very sensitive topic. We both know that is extremely sensitive as survivors. And Loriana, I just celebrate your braveness and being willing to share your story because I think we both agree that the whole point of this is to ensure that no one else has to endure it and that someone else is able to find freedom and, from the situation. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and you're a survivor. What happened? Let's talk to me.
I'll just start with that. I am a survivor. I'm celebrating 3 years this week of being free. Got out September 21st of 2017. And so a little bit about me specifically is I went to college for health promotion. And so I have been kind of in the whole health world, health mindset since college, and got married really quickly after college. And the next 10 years was riddled with sexual abuse, marital rape, emotional abuse, financial abuse, all of the above.
So you were married for 10 years.
I was, yep. And so I got out and I became a coach, and I've done a couple other things, but that's what I do now. And I love every minute of it. Okay.
So at 10 years, you said you got married really quickly. So I don't know if it doesn't matter. You got married really quickly and you were married for 10 years. Mm-hmm. You have beautiful children as a result of that. But throughout the marriage, there was some sexual abuse, like you said. There was domestic violence and sexual abuse. And so let's just define that for people that are watching. What would you say that is sexual abuse? What would you say?
So sexual abuse, so I'm gonna separate sexual abuse and marital rape because they're a little bit different. They share a lot of similar characteristics. Sexual abuse, I would say anything that is unwarranted advancements, uninvited. I guess advancements would be the best way to put it. So it's really hard for me to segment because so much of mine was marital rape.
So let's talk about that.
Another part of sexual abuse is even it's shared with emotional abuse as well. So I had things like talking about my body and degrading parts of my body verbally. My sexuality and just saying things that make me feel like less of a woman. So even though that's emotional abuse, that also kind of crosses over into sexual abuse a little bit. But to answer your question, you said talk a little bit about the marital rape.
Yeah, let's talk about marital rape because people don't believe that marital rape is an actual thing. And as I was researching for this session tonight, it's like marital rape didn't become a thing for a long time. And so people think, well, because you're married, then it's not rape. You have to have sex with your partner. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. And see, that's the hardest part for me, because what you just said is so true. You think that because you're married, this is normal. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have sex with your spouse. But so with marital rape, there's coercion. So when they basically talk you into it, let's say, okay, I'm going to give an example. We have 5 minutes to get out the door. Okay, we have 5 minutes to get out the door to be somewhere, and we're expected to be somewhere. But your spouse is saying, okay, I need a quickie. And you're like, no, we don't have time. This is just really simple. And they end up getting violent with you, getting forceful, getting angry. And they coerce you with either guilt or shame, or you know that later on down the road, maybe in 3 hours, when they didn't get what they wanted, they're going to treat you like crap because you didn't give in to their need for the quickie or whatever. That's just one simple example. I could go on for 10 hours about this.
You could, because you guys, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but Loriana is writing a book that we're publishing. And let me just tell you, I'll talk about it later. But when I tell you she can go on for 10 years about the types of sexual abuse and within her marriage, she can. And it is actually, it's very informative for someone who's unaware or who may be in that situation. But it's also enlightening for people who are just completely don't know or ignorant toward what sexual abuse within marriage looks like. And I know also that you're a Christian. So I know that part of your story is talking about sexual abuse within a Christian marriage. So let's just touch on that since I just brought it up.
Yeah. And so, so going back to the marital rape is, so part of it would be, like I said, coercion. Mm-hmm. Maybe at night you're tired, you're asleep, and you're not ready. Okay. Or you don't want to, or you can't, or maybe you had a fight and you're emotionally not there. Mm-hmm. Well, so when it comes to the Christianity, someone may use a Bible verse or your faith in general, the fact that you're married and that's a, holy union, or any aspect of the Bible or part of your faith, or anything where they pull in spirituality or faith and use it as a means to basically say, you don't have a right to tell me no. You have no place to say no, because, and I'll give you an example. My ex specifically used, 1 Corinthians, I don't have my glasses, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 5. He said, do not deprive each other of sexual relations unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time, so you can give yourselves more completely to prayer. And afterward, you should come together immediately so that Satan won't be able to tempt you because of your lack of self-control. He used that verse to tell me that we had to have it whenever he said so. We could not ever spend the night apart. And if I said no, I was depriving him. So I was violating that commandment, as he called it. Now, mind you, that's not what this is saying. This is actually talking about our union is together.
Right.
And yes, there are, conjugal rights, as they call them, just that you have a right to, if you're married, we should have a mutual agreement to engage with this to each other. And Absolutely. What that's saying is, don't get married and then say that you're not going to have sex. That's what that's saying. Not
when would he use that verse? When would he use that verse on you? How would he use that verse?
Oh gosh, anytime. I used it all the time. I mean, I'm probably anywhere from weekly to several times a month. Sometimes, several days in a row. If there was any time where maybe we would have 3 days where we might have somehow gone in between. Mm-hmm. Then he would say, it's been a while, and I'll say, I don't know. I'd come with something, maybe I'm on my period or something, I don't know. Yeah. And then he would say that, or I would say, it hurts. I can't, or we just did it, 3 hours ago. And he would say, he would pull this up and use it against me and say that you can't deprive me. Something else just came to mind as I was talking. I lost it. It'll come back to me, I'm sure.
If I'm going to write it down, so you make sure we say it. But I think it's really important. We both want to clarify that using scripture, whether you're a Christian or whatever faith that you are, to coerce your partner to have sex is not correct. That is not right. If they use it, it is wrong. And marital rape is an actual thing that you can be forced within the confines of a marriage to have sex. That is called rape. Okay, marital rape. And I know you wanted to make sure that people understood that the Bible is correct in what it's saying, but it's not supposed to be used to manipulate your partner into having sex with you. And I know that you talk a little bit about it in your book, and I'm not giving you guys the goodies in the book. Y'all gonna have to get it. I'm gonna tell you where. Trust me, you're gonna be glad that you did. But like, he required sex every a certain amount of hours. Like, after
that's what came to me. You're good. That's what came to me was so I started keeping track about 2 years into it, because I noticed that this was just not normal. And it was about every 18 hours, he wanted me to perform some way sexually, whether it was oral sex or manual or intercourse. Some way I had to perform for him every 18 hours. And that wasn't his set rule. That was kind of his pattern. That was his pattern.
So you recognize that every 18 hours he was requiring that from you. And were you able to say no?
No, because what would happen is there were times when I was just adamant, like, this is not going to happen. And I paid for it later emotionally with his attitude and the way that he treated me. And the tension in the air. He would get what he called sexually frustrated. So what would happen is, if I tried to tell him no, let me back up. So let's say we have a sexual encounter, okay? And let's say it's in the morning. Later on that evening, I could sense sometimes when it was about to come, and I could feel the tension coming, and I would sometimes I could prepare for it emotionally. Sometimes it was just kind of like, crap, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
But something's coming to me. I haven't been clear yet about the fact that this is not just he wants it and I don't. It's not like that.
Right.
The marital rape was, I said no, and he would pin me down and he would force himself on me, or he would say, because I'm his wife, this is what he wants, and he would take it whether I wanted it or not. He would I would tell him to stop because it hurts, and he wouldn't stop. So there was violence involved. There was aggression. There was force. So far, we haven't really gotten to that part of it, but I want to make sure that it's clear that it's not just a difference of
desire.
It's way different. It's way deeper, way more than just a difference in needs or sexual desire. It's the fact that I made a commitment to give it to him. I mean, I did. I mean, I married him. I thought I loved him. So I mean, it's not like I didn't want it. It's just, I did have some different needs. I was about every 3 days I was good to go, but 3 days never came around. And coming back to your question earlier about the frequency, I needed about 3 days. He wanted about every 18 hours. Okay, so that's just a difference. That can be any couple can have that.
Can have differences, absolutely. And I think that's clear. That's important to say that it's okay to have different drives. Yes.
Yeah. And so so what would happen is, the example I was giving was in the morning, and then at night it would come around. I'm trying to think of a specific time that would give me a clearer picture, but I would say no, or I'm not ready, or it hurts. And he would use guilt. He would say, well, but I'm sexually frustrated, and I need you to love on me. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. Or, well, I haven't had it all day, or, we're not going to have it tomorrow. So we need to have, let's say there's a trip or something. I don't know. He's going to be out of town, and he would know that he was not going to get it the next day. I'm not going to have it tomorrow, so I need to have it now. And it wasn't about intimacy for him. It was about a physical. It was like the equivalent of eating lunch, or it wasn't a connection with me. It was just a physical that he needed, that he had.
Yeah.
And I was his only outlet, and he wouldn't do it himself.
Right. And that's got to be really hard though, because you're a woman, you're more than that. You have your own, needs and desires, and they're not being met. It's kind of, you're there just to meet his needs. And that's exhausting. Then you have 2 children eventually at some point. But I want to touch on something. You talk about the emotional part of it. So when you denied him or said you didn't want to or whatever, or you felt the tension rising, he would criticize you and kind of verbally abuse you and things like that. So there was always like repercussions or something that came along with it.
Always. There was no dividing. There was no separating the two. They were directly connected. And that's how he got away with it. That and the spiritual abuse. That's how he got me to do what he wanted me to do, was using. I eventually caught on, because I fought a lot in the beginning. I fought it off a lot. And eventually I caught on to the fact that, well, if I don't, then this is going to happen. I knew what the consequence was going to be. And those were the guilt. He would say things, not that I owned the guilt or that I had any right to feel guilty, but I don't know. He was just very tactful in the things that he said. And somehow I felt guilty, even when I had nothing to be guilty for. And shame, guilt and shame, kind of both, right there together. I mentioned in the book shoulding. Shoulding is where, well, you should do this, you ought to, and you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, and just kind of twisting your mind and brainwashing. And so the sexual abuse and the marital rape was all tied into everything else about my life. My entire life was central around pleasing him sexually. When he wasn't pleased sexually, he was belligerent. He would punch walls, or he didn't always punch holes in them, but he would at least punch them. It's like he could control it just enough not to damage the door or the post, the fence post, or whatever it was he was punching. He knew what he was doing. And so a couple times he did actually punch a hole. But there was other times where it was like it was just a display of power, just to punch something and show me that he could.
So intimidation and fear all at the same time.
Go, yeah.
But all from a sexual frustration point.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. And how did you manage to deal with that? I mean, you stayed for 10 years. How did you manage to deal with it moving forward year after year?
I caved. I gave up. I turned belly up and went into survival mode. Basically, I was in survival mode. And I like you said, I don't want to give away too much in the book, but you can look this part up anywhere on the internet. So the brain goes into what they call dissociation. And there you have your fight or flight response that is designed for emergency situations. You fight or you flight. And then there is another path that is the freeze. And not everybody knows about that. But if you think of like deer in the headlights kind of thing, or like playing possum, the possum plays dead. That is the same thing. Well, we have that same mechanism in our brain, but it doesn't often get tapped into unless it's like, extreme situations. Well, it's designed for emergencies.
Right. Correct.
It's not designed for marriage.
It's not designed for you to be living on a daily basis every day.
Words out of my mouth. Yes. It is not designed for extended use. But that's what happened. And so day in and day out, I was in survival mode. I was just alive, but not alive at the same time. I did what he wanted.
I'm sorry, hold on one second. Let me just go back because I think a lot of survivors, as myself, also have lived that way. You're alive, but you're not really alive. You're just going through the motions. You kind of know what's going to come. You know what to expect. Kind of dead inside, dying inside, but you know what you need to do to survive.
Exactly. Yep.
Sorry.
So I just that's exactly right. And just doing what you have to do to survive.
Yeah, and that's really no way to live. And especially coming from a Christian marriage, that's not the way that God designed you to live. And if they want to use faith and religion as a way to keep you, that is not how He designed for you to live. He loves you more than He hates divorce. And so don't think that just because you are married, it's okay to be raped or sexually assaulted within your marriage. And it happens so often. And I know this conversation is very touchy, unsensitive, and there are some people that are watching or will watch the replay, Lorianna, that have experienced this or that are experiencing it as we speak. And so I want to make sure that we give them the tools that they need to be aware, to say, hey, okay, I knew this didn't feel right. I knew this wasn't normal. What do I do? And so what would you say are some of the red flags that you notice? I don't know if you would call them red flags while in the marriage, but I know you notice, like, okay, every 18 hours, that's a lot. I say no. He's not okay with me saying no. He forces me. He fights me, and when I don't do it, he emotionally and verbally abuses me or gets violent, not toward me, but in the wall and things like that. What would you say besides some of those are some of the red flags that someone who may be experiencing this should look for?
Those are you. I think you named you named everything that I was really experiencing. Just the insistence, the insistence, and the not taking no for an answer, and or fighting if you say no, the guilt, and oh boy, pornography is, and I know pornography is common. A lot of people watch it. A lot of men watch it. But when they try to bring that into the bedroom and you're not okay with it, that's something that has to be mutual. That's something that has to be agreed upon. Absolutely. If one person is not okay with it, then I'm sorry, you're going to have to enjoy it on the, like, that's your thing, not mine. But
yeah. And I think abusers try to use that to manipulate or want you to perform the way that they did on the videos that they're seeing. And that is, emotionally damaging and physically affects the bedroom and can affect it. They're actually requiring you to perform the way that they did on the television,
Exactly. And that's what he was doing, was he would tell me how to, what to say and how to look and how to move and all these things. And again, I don't want to give away too much in the book, but, but that's a big one is that, and wanting to bring other people into the bedroom. Like, no, that didn't actually happen to me, but for other people, I know that it happens. Trying to bring other people into the bedroom, and you're not okay with it.
And if it's not something you want, it's not something you want.
No, exactly. And some people do. That's different. That's different.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're not okay with it, it's the consent versus non-consent.
Exactly.
That's what we're talking about, is what is consensual and what is not consensual.
And non-consensual can happen within a marriage. Just because you said I do, it doesn't make it necessarily consensual.
Exactly. A lot of times when we think about rape, it's about extramarital situations. And here's another thing is, consent doesn't always mean I said no, or lack of consent.
Yeah.
Doesn't always mean I said no or I said stop, because the coercion in your heart, it's not an authentic yes. If you are being forced to say no, you don't have the freedom to say no. Then how are you really saying yes if you don't have the option to say no? You know what I mean? Like, that's part of when we're talking about consent. You have to have the freedom to say no before you can give an authentic yes.
That's good.
That's a big one that I ran into and that people don't think about. And in my case, I and I don't know if you were going to ask me this, but maybe I'm beating you to the punch. But
Go for it.
I did not realize what was actually happening. And I think you were going to ask me this, but I didn't. I knew that something wasn't right. I knew that felt I used the word violated was the word when I was talking to myself. And a couple times in a journal, I would write down the word violated, but that's the only word that I could think of. I didn't know what to call it. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people is when you're in it, especially if you thought you were marrying the love of your life, or you thought you were marrying a good person, or you thought you were marrying a Christian, and you have agreed upon a Christian marriage, and things start unfolding, and then all of a sudden you're caught with this hellacious relationship, and you don't know what to do, and you're in it. You don't know what to call it. If you've
there's no words.
Exactly. If you've never been exposed to domestic abuse, let's say no one in your family has ever even been divorced, which is my case. My family doesn't know divorce. I'm the first person in my family to get divorced. I think.
But I'm sure that wasn't an easy decision. I'm sure that wasn't an easy decision, knowing the family that you come from.
Exactly. So yeah, I had never even been involved in anything domestic violence whatsoever. I'd never seen it, didn't know anything about it. And so I did not know what to call it. I went to a counselor, and eventually she used the word abuse. And I'm like, well, she started saying, I don't know if you've ever heard of Leslie Vernick, but she's an author, and she wrote The Emotionally Destructive Marriage. Okay. And that's a really good book to get for anyone who is curious. That's another one that's good. And so she started kind of pointing me through that. But again, it's like I would read the word abuse, but it didn't really register. I wasn't owning it. It's weird though, because like in my journals, I wrote it a little bit, but looking back, I went through it. I stayed because I didn't think I could leave.
But abuse is a big word. Abuse is a big word, especially when you don't know it. You've never experienced it. Your family hasn't. You're like, abuse? That's not me. That's like what you see on the TV, because you're not walking around, Lorianna, with any black eyes or bruises. You don't
exactly
like the typical abused woman. You know what I mean? And so I thought that was a really interesting point that you just made. And I just want to touch on some faith, because I talk to a lot of survivors who are struggling with their faith and their marriage when it comes to abuse. And they feel, well, because they're married, they have to stay, or because they're married, they have to perform sexually the way that they want, or be forced to have sex within their marriage. And it's a really rough struggle. And for an abuser who is aware, whether it's a man or a woman, whoever the abuser is aware that they can use spiritual abuse as a tactic, they get away with this for so much longer because they use that spiritual abuse. But I think Mary said it great just now. At some point it clicks. At some point it clicks, like, this is not okay. I wanted to touch on, someone a few minutes ago said that sometimes they will drug you or use drugs and then sexually assault you as well.
Yes, that is absolutely true. No, that didn't I didn't even think about that, because mine didn't do that. But yes, that's so true. That's so true. And and that's another one. When you think about it, those are the types of things that we think about in extramarital situations. We hear about it all the time, but you don't think about it happening within your marriage. You just don't.
Yep. And I wanted to say too, like, you're no one's property. That's one of the things that I think is really important to recognize. You're no one's property. Just because you said I do does not give anyone the opportunity, or even if you didn't say I do, you're not anyone's property, and they don't have the right to violate you in any way, shape, or form, verbally, physically, sexually, nothing. Just got to put that out there. So I want to really quickly, put up the RAINN National Sexual Assault Hotline for anyone who may be experiencing that. Please see the number on the bottom of the screen. But while I have that going, let's talk about, because I know you talked about you started to see a therapist. And I always want to get to, because part of your book, you talk about how to find hope and healing after going through this. Because you guys, let me tell you, the bravery that it took for her to write her book. I mean, I was reading it and my husband was like, what? I'm like, this book. This book, and I was gasping. And I was like, because I'm just like, she is so strong to have gone through this and come out on the other side and be willing to talk about these things. I know that people are going to be free by watching this, and they're also going to be free by reading your book. So let's talk about what happened after you decided something clicked for you. Let's talk about that moment of it clicking, like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. And again, I'm trying to decide how much to really say, but yes, I will say that let's just say I heard the voice of God. Let's put it that way.
Okay. I hear you on that, sister. Okay.
Yeah. I felt a very, very, very strong calling that that it was God that was telling me, I love you and I want you safe.
Mm.
Oh God, I'm about to cry.
It's okay, you can cry. I love that. I love that.
So, and I will say this, and along the way, well, right before I left, my mom had said a couple times along the way, if you left, we would understand. She never pushed me. She never got involved. She never asked questions because she knew that I wasn't going to tell her anything, and I didn't. My parents knew nothing. They didn't know anything that was going on. They knew like the emotional stuff that they saw with their own eyes, but they didn't know anything was happening in the bedroom. But she just made the comment every now and then, if you left, we would understand.
Wow.
And they always cut me slack with like missing funerals or not being able to attend this, that, or the other. They never made me feel pressured because they knew that he was pressuring me. But back to your question.
But that was good. I think your mom was really planting seeds. I think you really needed to hear those nuggets of, hey, I got you. It's okay.
Yes.
When you're ready.
Absolutely. So I think what really clicked was it was a series. It kind of was building over the last, I would say, 3 years. But to be honest with you, I think I was building up for it for the entire marriage. Wow. The whole 10 years was a process of getting to the point of actually leaving. So, and that's why I wrote the book, because it was such a long process. And I know I'm not the only one that can say that. It's for so long, I knew I needed to change, but I didn't think I was allowed to leave. When I say allowed, I mean biblical grounds.
Got it.
But also you got to think about the way that he brainwashed me using spiritual. I am so connected to my faith that anything outside the will of God was not okay with me. So to think that I was going to have to live the rest of my life guilty of sin because I divorced my husband, I wasn't willing to live with that. And so I had to wrestle between, okay, do I live in hell or do I, the alternative and go ahead and leave? Like I couldn't, there was no reconciliation in my head, because the things that he was saying did not match up with my actual spirituality. So I was just like, oh my God, you just have to read the book.
Yeah,
because I can't say it here. I don't have time to say it here.
Yeah, but the confusion that the two worlds collide in, it's just because something in the core of you, but they're telling you something different for 10 years. But I kind of had like the same moment where it was like, I felt like God spoke to me and said, I love you more than I hate divorce. Like, it's okay if you get divorced, I'm going to still love you tomorrow. Because, when you grow up that way, you hear, God hates divorce, God hates divorce. It's like, but God loves me way more than that. He did not create for me to live like this.
I actually wrote a blog about what you said. I actually wrote a blog called God Loves His Children More Than He Hates Divorce. and I explain it so in depth, because that is so true. We hear it, and that's my ex even used that. God hates divorce. He used the word. He even said God doesn't believe in divorce. And I'm like,
goodness,
pretty sure God doesn't need to believe in anything.
But then it's like you start to believe things. That's a thing. And I think people don't. Hold on. I want to say two things before I say that. First of all, Jay, I want to say that I'm so sorry. I think I read very quickly that you lost your child to domestic violence, and that cutie in your picture is, I believe, your daughter's son. It went really quickly, but I just want to say that we are so sorry for your loss. And Amira made a good point. Same in the Islamic religion and culture. It was not okay to divorce. And again, we're talking about religions on all different fronts here. And so realizing that it's okay to divorce because you're not supposed to live with abuse. I think, I swear, if we could put that on a billboard or somewhere really loud so people can see that, because people are dying in relationships, and specifically I'm saying in marriages, as we're talking about tonight, and not even married, but because they believe that they can't get divorced because of their faith. Yeah. And it's literally killing people.
And the truth about it is that just like you're saying, it's not, you're not bound. You said it earlier. You are no one's property.
No.
A marriage is a union. It is a union, but there is a verse, and oh God, is it right here? Okay, so it says underneath that verse, so in 1 Corinthians chapter 7:15, it says, but if a husband or wife who isn't a believer insists on leaving, let them go. In such cases, the Christian husband or wife is no longer bound to the other, for God has called you to live in peace. And, I would like to ask a pastor to kind of, or someone who's really good in interpretations, because,
to expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Because, so an unbeliever can get divorced, but a believer can't, for peace, for the sake of peace. Like, what?
Yeah. And the crazy part is there's no peace in an abusive relationship. I wanted to say a little bit earlier how you wouldn't know, like you didn't walk around with a black eye, or broken arms or anything like that, but you were being abused on different levels in the home. And you could go to picnics, you can go to church, you can go everywhere. No one would ever know it. And this is like this, it's the silent killer. It's a secret.
And I want to that point, and I'm glad you brought that back up, because I did want to say this, and this was something that I struggled with. And sometimes I catch myself still saying this. That I would be asked if it was physical violence. Was there domestic violence? Was I physically abused?
Right.
And I would say no. Why? Because of what you just said. I'm not walking around with broken bones. I'm not walking around with, bruises and black eyes and, chunks of my hair missing, or scrapes, or, God forbid, my head smashed in. That's what I would think of when I thought of physical violence, physical abuse. Sexuality, sex is physical.
It is.
That is still a physical part of your body. And if it's bleeding, and if it's bruised, and if you can't walk for 2 days, or, you roll over in the fetal position feeling like you're going to puke because of what he just did, that's physical abuse. Just because no one else can't see it doesn't mean it's not physical abuse.
Yes.
And that it took a long time for that to click in my head.
Yeah, and we're here with like our big loud phones to tell you guys that it is abuse, and that for you to share it with someone else, that they need to know that it's abuse too, that it's not normal and that it's not okay. And so we just want to really say that from the loudspeaker real quick. I also just lost my train of thought. I forgot what I was going to say. But I lost it. So let's talk about the healing process, because I think that the healing process is very important. Lorietta, you could not be sitting in front of me today. You could not be writing a book if you had not taken the time to heal what you had been through. And we're talking about 10 years of just like this silent pain that you don't really get to share with anybody. So let's talk about the healing process for those that are watching. And this is any type of violence, any type of abuse. What does that look like? What does your healing process look like?
Well, I will say this, it took a lot of work. It's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that's going to happen just because you're out. It's not something that's going to happen just because you're going to counseling. It's not something that's just going to go away. You have to do the work. And that's what I did. And I think I had been in and out of counseling for 20 years because I suffered from depression before I ever met him. And I had some things happen in college, and so I was in and out of counseling. I was kind of used to counseling, and but all those years, the reason I was in and out of counseling for 20 years is because I wanted them to wave a magic wand. I wanted to just go to counseling and that be enough. It never clicked that I actually had to do the work. I would do the exercises. I would answer the questions, but I wasn't actually doing the inner work. It wasn't internalized. So when I got out, I knew that it had to work. I knew that I was never going to go back. I was out on my own. I had moved back to my home state. Literally 2 weeks. Oh God, I'm going to cry. 2 weeks after I moved home, my dad died. 2 weeks after I got home,
Wow. Wow.
So that was rock bottom for me. And I had to make it work. And
Wow.
I knew that I just kind of thought about, what would Daddy do? What would Daddy say? Daddy was always the one that I could go to for advice for anything in life. Again, he didn't know everything that I was going through, but I still could rely on him to feed me with, in my brain.
Yeah.
So I had to just kind of like think about, okay, I'm out. I'm not going back. What do I have to do? I buckled down and I started with my track. Who is Loriana? What makes me me?
Mhm.
Okay, all this had been ripped away from me for so long. I wasn't allowed to be myself. His thing was, you're married now. Okay, well, I'm not married now. So, well, I was, till the divorce, but I was separated. But, okay, well, I'm alone. So what does that mean? What makes me me? What makes me feel good? What makes me feel alive? So I started making lists. I started making lists of things I enjoyed, things that made me feel alive, things that made me happy, things that made me feel good. Even if it was down to eating, ice cream in bed, anything that made me feel alive, made me feel good, made me feel happy, made me feel like me.
I just want to say real quick, I love that because so much of that in the past 10 years didn't exist. What made you happy? What made you smile? Eating ice cream in the bed with the kids, whatever didn't exist because you lived to satisfy, the abuser. And so I love this little small thing. That right there is so key. And I think Cami Martin, my friend, she wrote a book about that too. And she talks about how she just kind of listed what she likes. Who am I? Who am I outside of this? And I think you guys who are watching, it seems like such a really small thing, but it is so powerful because you start to come back to yourself.
Mm-hmm. And there's something about writing it physically, not typing it. Now that you can, but there's something about this, the connection from your brain to your hand to the paper, and then your eyes to the paper. It creates a circuit.
It does.
And so there is literally something about journal. When I ask people to journal, and everybody that I coach, one of the first things I do is I say, hey, do you have a journal? That's what I say. Do you have a journal? If not, go get one because you're going to be journaling. Yeah, I make everybody journal. And so that's the first thing we do is we write down what makes us alive. Mm-hmm. The next thing was getting over the fact that I was afraid. I was terrified. So I had to face my fears. And what was my fear all along was him being mad at me. My fear was not being perfect for him. My fear was him lashing out or something going wrong or something not being right and him getting angry. I had to get over that because I wasn't going to get anywhere as long as I was afraid of it. I was going to stay right where I was. So I had to learn that he is him, I am me, I'm not his, and I'm not connected. I am a completely different soul, a completely different individual than him. And I know that God did not create me for him like he said he did. So I had to be okay with, okay, he's mad. That's it. The end.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Okay, he's mad.
Exactly. And that was one of the things that I was never able to be okay with because there was always something going to come back on the back end. But now I was out. So what can he do? Like he can't rape me again. Yeah. He can't do anything to me. People kept asking me though, and this is something that not everyone does have the luxury of being safe.
Yes,
so I do want to make that distinction. I was in a situation where I was not overly afraid of him coming at me physically, coming at me with a gun or meeting me at my car and strangling me. I did not know. Other people, a lot of people do have that. And that's where before anything, I would recommend getting somewhere safe where going no contact, where there is no way, shape, or form that they can get in contact with you, and have an attorney, have those safety nets to protect you.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Whereas I didn't feel like I needed that, but so many other people do.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad to clarify
that out there first.
Yeah, that's good.
But so I got an attorney. That was the next thing I did. And I was still dealing with boundaries. And that's something that I talk about in the book. I was still dealing with boundaries and not knowing how to enforce them. I literally took the words that my attorney told me to say, and I repeated them to him. This was not me. Like, I was like, what do I say? Say this. Okay. Duh. What do I say? Say this. Okay. I didn't have it in me. So I had to learn from my attorney and the counselor that I had at the time.
Yeah.
And good Lord, I learned so much of how to talk just through them, because I didn't know how to do it. Wow. And so that's one thing that I teach people now, is how to actually do it. They say, enforce boundaries. Well, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah. What does that look? How do I apply them? What does that look like?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. I think one thing you said that was really good just now was do not own their feelings. They're their feelings. Yes. Like, Gloriana, if you're upset right now, okay, that's you. You're going to be upset. That doesn't mean that I should carry that. And I think it's important to separate the two. I understand that while you're in an abusive situation, like Gloriana just said, it's very difficult to do. But as you begin to say, wait, this isn't healthy, I might start backing up, do not carry and own their feelings. That's what they want you to do.
Exactly.
Do not, especially narcissists. Exactly. They love that. Do not carry their emotions.
And that's why it's so important to go no contact or Gray Rock if you have kids together.
Gray Rock. If you don't know what it is, look it up. Gray Rock. Very black and white. Answer questions. Yep. Take the information from the attorney and give it to them. That's it.
Exactly. As little contact as you possibly need. No extra conversation. Don't defend yourself. Don't argue. Don't elaborate. They don't need every detail. Even now, I still find myself sometimes, like, if I need to pick the kids up early, I'll find myself starting to text why,
explaining,
and then I hear my attorney in my head say, he doesn't need to know why.
Yeah,
he doesn't need to know that you have a right to get your kids early, so that you have to remember they don't need to know everything. And that's one of the things that because the more you say, the more words they have to manipulate you. And
they will use every word that you give them against you.
Yeah, yes. Exactly.
And especially if you're in court for anything like children, anything like that, be really careful. Yes, Amira, look up Gray Rock. Gray Rock is really important. It'll really help with blanket statements, not getting too emotionally connected to the abuser at that point. So I know that you do okay, so you said the healing process. Yes, Gray Rock, guys. Look up Gray Rock. It's true. It's a thing. Check it out. Okay.
Can I say one thing before you say that? Okay. So there was all of that, and good Lord, prayer. Oh my God. So I connected in a way. I connected in prayer in a way that I had never done in my entire life. I was saved when I was 12. I became a Christian when I was 12 years old. So and I'm 36 now. And at the time I was 33 to do the math. At the time I was 33. In all those years, I had never connected with the Lord the way that I did when I left. I learned what it meant to literally walk in blind faith. I'd heard the term always before, but I didn't know, I had never had to. Yeah. At this point, and this is kind of going back to like when my dad died, it's like, well, what would he say? What would he tell me to do? He would tell me to pray. Okay, well, I pray all the time, but it's like a different level of prayer. Yeah. It's a completely different, it's like almost like a different dimension. Yeah, that's good. So I was carried through prayer. I was carried through boundaries, overcoming my fears, learning who I was, connecting to who I was, and finally doing, and mindfulness. Mindfulness was the last little piece, learning to live right now, not in the past and not in the future, but only right now.
That's good. Hold on. I want to go back to something you said because my spirituality is huge to me. For those of you that follow me and know me, that is huge. And for me, when I connect, it was a desperation for God. It was a so whatever your spiritual belief is, that's fine. But it was a desperation for connecting with my Lord to understand what happened to me. You have to save me. You have to help me. Because at this point, I don't even know who I am. I have officially lost my mind. And if you don't save me, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I literally
Amen. Amen. Yes.
And I literally felt like he was carrying me through season after season after season, and continues to do the same. But it became, so I would always encourage someone to connect with, spiritually, because it's something for me at least, and obviously for Loriana too, it's something that really, really carried. I mean, desperate. You ever been desperate? Like, because when you leave, you're so confused. You don't know who you are. I was just so lost. Had 2 children. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, God, you have to help me because I believe you love me more than what I've been enduring in this marriage. And he did. And he did.
Yeah. Yes.
So I see all of you guys comments. Oh my goodness. We've been almost on for an hour. Okay. So isn't that crazy? So I want to make sure that you guys are able to ask any questions that you may have for Loriana. Loriana is a coach. She's a holistic life and wellness coach as well. She works with survivors who have survived domestic violence. And so if you want to connect with her, I'm going to put her website up. And
while you're doing that, I realized through the healing process that I was a people pleaser, and I didn't know that before.
Yes.
So one of the big things that I help people now with specifically is overcoming being a people pleaser.
Yeah, that's really good. And the thing is, when you're in a domestic, all you do is live to please them. You're walking on eggshells so much. You don't want to upset them. You don't want to get them upset. You're just constantly living like that. And I think, Tanya, she just said something earlier, and you said it about over-explaining yourself. Like you always feel like you always want to give people more information than they need because you want to justify why you're doing.
Yep. And I did the same thing.
Yeah. And I learned at one point, it was like, no, I don't want to go. Nope. I don't know, but it's one of the most freeing things, Loriana, ever, because you're so used to explaining and pacifying people and things, being a people pleaser, that when you learn to say no because you really just don't want to go or you don't feel comfortable, you just say no.
Exactly. And you find your voice. You find your voice. So stop being a doormat. You find your voice. You stop people pleasing, and those 3 components protects you from things like what we're talking about tonight happening again, and domestic violence in general. Finding those 3 stepping stones, or those pillars, if you will, it really protects you in the future from these things coming back around, because a lot of people do get back into other domestic and other abusive relationships. It's like we seem to attract them for some reason.
You made a good point. I don't know if you remember what the 3 pillars were, but if someone is, while you guys are watching, can someone write these down in the comments real quick? So I know what was the first one. Do you remember?
Okay, it was finding your voice.
Finding your voice. You guys know I'm all about finding your voice. There's nothing more powerful. And let me tell you something. I think I shared this already, but my sister, once I found my voice, I used to just say yes to everything. And she's like, oh, you say no to everything now. We should get you a billboard that said Lisa says no. Well, yeah, because I found my voice and I said no. And one thing I do too, is a little caveat, but if I don't feel comfortable going somewhere or being around people, I don't go. I don't ever force myself to be in any situation or place where I don't feel comfortable. And I know that it stems from my abusive relationship, because I was always somewhere I didn't want to be. I was always uncomfortable, and even in his presence. So that's one thing. Protect your space. Protect. You don't allow anybody to penetrate this part of, come this close to you if you don't feel safe around them. It's a no. It's a no. And one thing she just said is about being present. But okay. Thank you. Find your voice. What was the second one?
Stop being a doormat.
Hold on. Stop being a doormat. Stop saying yes when you want to say no. Stop putting yourself in uncomfortable situations where you're unhappy, situations that people have the opportunity to violate you. The answer is no. Stop being a doormat. You don't owe anybody anything.
Yep. And stop being a people pleaser.
They said, what happened to the sound? Somebody else told me, did the sound go away? I don't think so. Okay, good. They're still hearing us. Okay, what's the third one?
Stop being a people pleaser.
Don't be a people pleaser. Those days hopefully are behind you. And if they're not, they're coming soon. And I want to say something as well, because for Loriana, it took her 10 years to actually leave. So if you can't walk away today, okay, but you can begin to find your voice. You can begin to stop being a doormat. You can begin to slowly begin to work your way out. Go ahead, Laura.
I want to, what you just said, part of that is if you can't leave right now, go ahead today and start journaling, start writing things down, because that was a part. I am so immensely glad that I did that all the way through, because I looked back and I could see my own inconsistencies, and I could see like my trauma bond and my ways that I was protecting him, even in my own journals.
Wow.
Even my own journals, because at one time I had two different journals. I had the one that I thought he might end up finding, and I had the one that I hid in the back of my closet.
Wow.
And they were parallel in time, and they were complete opposites. I was living a double life. I was living completely fake. So write down your truth in a journal somewhere that your abuser cannot find it, even if you can't leave right now, because you're going to use that. You're going to use that when you get out to remind you. You're going to use it when you get out to say, okay, I don't want to be that anymore. I don't want that to happen. Holy crap, I can't believe that happened. I don't even remember that.
Yes.
Because that's one thing that with PTSD and complex PTSD, and I talk about that in the book as well, with those things, we shut them off. We don't get a chance to process what actually happened. So we actually end up, they snowball because we forgot that it happened in the first place. We remember that something happened, but we don't remember what it was. We can't verbalize it. So when something happens, write it down, then you'll come back to it later.
That's good. And when we're in it, we forgive them and we keep going. And so we're like, oh, it's okay. They said sorry. And we kind of move on. Last week I had on documenttheabuse.com. Check it out. That's a way that you can document the abusive situations that are currently happening in your relationship. And I'm missing Sherry Kirkendall. She also has another app. Oh my goodness. Forgive me, Sherry. It's slipping me right now.
Your voice.
No.
Voice.
Yes. Oh, I can't believe it. I'll put it down in the comments, you guys, but it's really important.
I think it's on my website too.
That you document. And I remember for myself, I used to have the journals, and he would apologize. So I'd rip those pages out so that I didn't have to remember, and there comes a point where I said, Lisa, no more, because I would tell myself it wasn't as bad. I would tell myself that he said he was sorry. I would tell myself he said he wouldn't do it again, and I'd move on. But then again, I started saving the things. I'm like, wait a minute, this is same thing happening over and over again. It's time that I was honest with myself about what was happening in my marriage.
And see, to that point, what you just said. So I have journals so I actually left one time in 3 years after the marriage, and I documented the entire thing. At the end, at 10 years later, well, at that point, 7 years later, it was all the same stuff. Like,
oh my gosh,
I could have written it at the same time. Nothing changed in 7 years.
Yeah, that's a significant point. And you endured 7 more years of abuse, 7 more years of sexual abuse, 7 more years of emotional abuse, and it didn't change. And you guys know me. I will always say that God can do anything. God can change anyone. But like I say, if an abuser decides to change it, 110% has to be their individual choice, where they are actively seeking help and getting the help that they need. Yes. What else do we want to touch on? So you guys, Domestic Violence Awareness Month is next month, October 2020. Her book comes out next month, and it's titled You Think You Know, But You Have No Idea. Because you think you know, but you have no idea. And she talks about domestic abuse in a Christian marriage. She talks about, domestic abuse, sexual violence within a Christian marriage as well. And she also talks about tools and tips that help you get out, how to find healing and all that kind of stuff. It's pull-packed. It is on her website. You can pre-order ASAP. I encourage it. It's so good, y'all. I'm not even celebrating the fact that Lisa Nicole Publishing did it. That's regardless. That's not even the point. But it is so good. And trust me, if you don't buy it for yourself, buy it to put on your shelf, buy it to give it to someone, buy it to share it with someone at church. But that's another topic for another day. So here's the RAIN hotline. If you are experiencing any sexual assault or abuse and you have questions or want to talk to, please. And then, of course, the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
And you put up my website, but just a reminder, everybody, that is going to be switching over to just LorianaNewman.com. I had technical difficulties, so it's not done yet. kairotic moments. Real quick, kairos is an ancient term for time, and like a pivotal moment in time for something to change. And that's why I chose that word to begin with. But a lot of people don't know what it is, and they don't know how to pronounce it. So I'm like, this isn't working. So it's going to be
LorianaNewman.com. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she offers coaching as well, you guys. If you're looking for someone who's been where you are to help you journey to where she is and where she wants to be, she's happy. Y'all see that smile? She's living her best life. She's living her best life and using her gifts to help other people what she's been through. So, and I love the word that, it's in the Bible, Cairo and stuff like that. I just love that because it's a shift in time, moment wellness. And so, all right, anybody have any questions? We're going to give you like 30 seconds to drop them in the comments because, I don't like to keep my guests this long. To ask you those questions. Okay, so if you guys have questions, I'm just going to say this. And Loriana said, of course, do the work. Your healing is not going to come from the sky. Your wholeness is not going to fall out of a crystal ball. You got to put the work in, and it's not going to be pretty. Go ahead. You want to say something? Go.
Oh, I was just going to say, so my counselor gave me her mom actually used to tell her that God puts a fire in your belly to do what you have to do. Mm-hmm. And that was so true. You have to reach down deep, find the guts and pull them up and face the fear. That's what it's about, facing the fear, because that's what holds people back. There's freedom on the other side of fear. Mm-hmm. There is freedom on the other side of fear.
Yes. So I want to make April. Hey, April. I know you said that you do something with survivors. Can you just put it down in the comments real quick? I want to go back up to somebody had a question. What about a guy who wants to date you, but you're not interested? And he starts abusing, controlling you as if you're married anyway.
Run. So that's run. So I would, and you can chime in too, but I would say go ahead and just block him. Get other people involved. Let other people know that that's happening, so that they can come to your side and defend you and protect you as well. And don't try to face it on your own. The more people that know what's happening, the more support you have. That's where your power, because remember, there's power in numbers.
Yep. That's a really good answer. And run, go. Again, you're not in a relationship. You're not married. There's no commitment. Do not feel obligated because someone wants to pressure you to feel as though they have rights to you.
That's the people pleasing. Yeah. That's the people pleasing. That like hands down, that is the people pleasing. That's why I married my ex, with people pleasing.
Wow. April, I was saying, I know that you said you do something with survivors. If you want to just add that in the comments, you can. So I would encourage, I know I was trying to find this comment, it went by so fast, but I know sometimes something has happened to someone at a point in their life, right, Loriana? Some type of trauma that they've endured and they can't move forward. And it just does something to me inside, because I want nothing more for you than for you to heal and move forward and experience the other side of that pain and that trauma. So what would you say to someone? I think someone said something similar like that in the comments. What would you say to someone who feels stuck because of trauma that happened a long time ago?
So counseling, I know a lot of people have been in and out of counseling like I was, and they probably, I've talked to a lot of people who have bad taste in their mouth for counseling. And a lot of it, I think, is because of that same mindset that I had, which was it doesn't work. But counseling is, therapy, not so much counseling, but therapy. Someone who specializes in PTSD therapy, that is a huge one. Specializes in PTSD therapy, exposure therapy, EMDR, EFT, emotional freedom technique, or emotional freedom tapping, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And I do that with folks. So find someone who does actual therapy instead of just counseling, and learn. So I do a combination of meditation and mindfulness. And this is the part that helped me get over the past and the anxiety of the past and the PTSD. I still have symptoms of PTSD to this day. In fact, I take this every day. I take my CBD every day. So, I still have those symptoms, and I find sometimes the anxiety, the panic attacks, they come back up, and they may continue for a long time. it's about learning to be in the right now, because when you're in the right now, you literally cut off the past and the future. So you can't be okay and anxious and panicking at the same time. Your brain literally will not do it. So when you meditate and you practice the practice of mindfulness, you're training your brain to use that tool, so that when you're not meditating and doing that, when you're in your everyday life, you're training your brain to take that path later and bypass the anxiety and the panic and the memories, the flashbacks. You have to basically retrain your brain through, and it's practice, it's work. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen on its own. You have to actually do it and teach your brain to do it. But that's what I would say.
I absolutely agree with that. I was actually trying to find my book here. The Body Keeps Score. I don't know if you've read it, but it's a really good book. Yeah, and it tells you that your body remembers the trauma that you've been through, but you have to train your mind, like she said, to be very present, to go through the process of healing, because it wasn't meant for you to be stuck where you were. You know, and I saw a few comments, people talking about, you don't want to live in survival. Living in survival mode all the time is absolutely exhausting. It is not how we were created to live. You can't live like that and not feel exhausted and high anxiety.
And to that point, is that Marie? The living in survival mode all the time. That's where this practice comes in, because it releases you from that. I cannot stress it enough that there is real work that you have to do. They call it personal growth for a reason. Growth kind of, think about growing pains. It's not fun growing up, but this is kind of like hitting the reset button and learning to grow into your new body, just like a butterfly, a caterpillar. I think I read somewhere recently, a caterpillar has to be broken down into mush and like basically goop before it reforms into a butterfly.
Oh, that's nice.
And so if you think about that, you do end up, you have to pull all these pieces out. You have to process the trauma too. If you have not been with a therapist to process the trauma, you're not going to get anywhere until you process it, because it's going to stay suppressed and it's going to pop up whenever it wants to. You don't get to choose when it pops up.
And like,
so you have to process it.
Yeah, absolutely. 110%. You have to process it. You can't just like bury it over and think it's not gonna come back. A little water rushes by, a little trigger happens, and it's back up surface again. Go.
I was gonna say, I did exposure therapy. So that's what I did with my therapist, was exposure therapy. I literally wrote down, that's actually I think why I felt so comfortable writing the book was because I had already processed it through literally writing down the exact examples. This event is what happened, and this is what I felt like. This is what I smelled. This is what the air felt like. This is what the sounds that I heard. You live it. You relive the event on paper, and then you hash it out with a therapist. I would not recommend doing it unless you have somebody to do it with you.
Exactly. And exposure therapy is not for everyone. So for some people that wouldn't work, but for you specifically, it worked. And I love how they broke that down with you. And she did it in the safe compounds with the therapist.
Yes, exactly.
And I read one time you were strong enough to survive the abuse. You're strong enough to survive the healing of the abuse.
Oh, and that's like a good one. I like that.
Yeah, and like she said, it breaks you down. It hurts. And you're like, this is healing shouldn't feel like this, but it does, because guess what? You come back stronger and wiser. You're able to say no with no problem. You're able to function and fulfill your dreams. Because I know Loriana, he didn't want you to go to school to pursue what you wanted. And and you're doing your master's right now.
Yeah.
In public health administration. What did I get?
Yeah, master in public health with a concentration in nutrition.
Yeah, just living your best life.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so let me see. Thank you, Nan. I appreciate that. I'm so glad that you love the lives. I'm so glad that means a lot. And Shanetta, I just want to say that mountain can absolutely be moved. Do not let anything stop you from moving forward, healing, and moving on with your life. Everyone's situation is different. Some are more complicated, but you can still survive it and thrive after abuse. It's been an hour and 15 minutes, and I'm gonna let Loriana go. So, Loriana, thank you so much for your transparency.
Thank you so much.
And I was going to say too, I forgot, you wouldn't have been able to write this book or be here if you hadn't healed.
Yeah.
And I want people to recognize that you did the work.
Yeah.
Do the work and
Yes.
watch the results come. So I'm going to put up one more time really quickly. You can find her at Kairotic Moment Wellness. And remember, that's going to be changed to Lorianna Newman, and grab her book. You go to her website. I'm going to leave that up there. You can go to the tab, get her book, pre-order it. It comes out next month, which is in like just a few weeks for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So
right now it's still under resources. It's under the resources tab. I got to move it, but that's where it's at right now.
Find the resources tab, and I'll put it up. So they can go grab it. You definitely want to grab it so that as soon as it's pre-ordering it right now, as soon as it comes out in a few weeks, it's shipped off directly to you. All right, you guys, thanks for hanging with me, and I will see y'all next week. Thanks, Lorianna.
Bye. Thanks.
And Lorianna, don't go anywhere.
Okay.
You don't go. Hold on. Okay, bye. Yes, thank you, Amira. Strong enough to heal through the trauma because you were strong enough to go through the abuse. You can heal after this. All right, we'll see you guys later.